Hey guys, what is up? And we are back with another week of Broadway grosses, so let's get into it. Up first, we have & Juliet. & Juliet went from 80% to 88%, and 824K to 966K, which is a sizable increase from last week. And & Juliet's had a bit of a rough couple of weeks, but it is still doing just fine. A Beautiful Noise went from 54% to 67%, and 757K to 929K, and that is closing next month. Back to the Future is doing not as good as expected. Last week it did 79%, and this week it did 78% capacity. Last week 845K, and this week 872K. Now, again, I don't think this is going to close anytime soon. I think it's made enough money in the summer and in the winter that it will be just fine. Obviously, if it hits sevens and sixes, then yes, it could close, by the end of the year, like some people are predicting. But I think it's going to do amazing over the summer, and that will save it from closing. Cabaret at the Kit Kat Club is the highest average ticket on Broadway at the moment, with $235 as the average ticket, with a capacity of 99% compared to last week's 100%, and 1,920,289 to 2,009,348, a mammoth of a revival. And I don't think, obviously, it's going to sustain these numbers for years. So it will be interesting to see what happens once Eddie leaves the production. Hadestown did 94% last week and 97% this week, and 734K last week to this week's 810K. So Hadestown is doing solid. Hamilton is surprisingly doing quite low. Last week it played to 95% capacity, and this week it sold out. The gross last week was 1,732,853, and this week it did 1,723,901. Now, this is obviously still box office mammoth numbers. It's doing exceptionally well, and it's obviously not gonna not make $1 million for. It's gonna make $1 million plus, 1,500,000 plus for many more years to come, but it definitely is facing a bit of a lull recently. Hell's Kitchen is the surprise hit of the season with an capacity of 101% compared to last week's 99%, and 1,270,519 to an astonishing 1,503,809, over half of 2 million. Wow. Those Tony nominations helped a lot. And I honestly don't think that this will close in January like I predicted. I thought that this would be kind of a success, before the Tonys and then start to fall. Still could happen. Still is a good possibility. But when the show is doing this well, it's very hard for it to close in less than a year. So I don't know why people like it so much, because a lot of people that see it don't like it. But I think that, again, the Tony noms, the critics pick, Alicia Keys, it being kind of a fun, musical is helping a lot. Even though I know it does deal with racism at some points. I don't think it's the most political musical. Illinois, which had 6 performances because the stage manager died, sadly, performed to 91% last week and 94% this week, and 684K last week and 679K this week. It probably would have gotten back into the $700,000 club. Again, I think Illinois, if it wins Best Musical, I think it will move to another theater. I think if it doesn't win Best Musical, they probably won't, because obviously it's not making $1 million weekly. I think it definitely could get to that point. I think Illinois, was a late addition. So a lot of people just don't know what it is. I went and saw it again, and it's exceptional. Again, because I saw it at the Armory Theater back in March. and it was like pretty sold out, but there was some people that didn't know what it was. They just knew it was based off of an album. So while it is a popular album, it is a popular niche album, and it's not along the lines of a Jagged Little Pill, even though that show, wasn't a mammoth hit. It was making $1 million weekly. And I think that the audience of Illinois is definitely are not able to pay top dollar. The average ticket is, I think, intentionally being kept under $100, even though they have skyrocketed. This is one of the most affordable musicals you could see besides Lempicka, honestly. If you get tickets early enough in advance, they have tickets for like $40, $50, $70. It's definitely a very affordable night of theater. But again, I think that this is doing better. Like, this is obviously the best musical contender. Some people might say it suffs, but this is leading. And compared to A Strange Loop and Akimbo, it is doing better than both of those significantly. And even in the summer, I think it will hit 8s and maybe 9s. I don't think it's gonna make it's not gonna make Hell's Kitchen money, even if it wins Best Musical. It could. But I definitely think Illinois is needing some time to catch on, but it is doing solid business because it is a prestige musical, so they're not expecting it or, needing it to make millions of dollars. So I'd say it's just getting by. It's not doing exceptional, I mean, obviously, any show doing under 700K isn't amazing. It's not good, but it's doing solid, and it's improving week by week by week, and it's selling quite well. So I'd say that for right now, Illinois is doing solid business. And I honestly think it could have done worse, honestly, with how packed this season is. I think it's holding its own quite well. Because while Illinois is not, it is a jukebox musical, but it kind of isn't. It kind of could classify it as a new musical because a lot of audiences that go and see musicals on Broadway don't know Illinois the album. They don't know what it's about. And I think because it is a dance piece, not everyone's going to love it, even though I think it's the most mainstream Best Musical contender since Hadestown, even though it is focusing on a gay love story. I definitely do think, the dance piece, no dialogue aspect, kind of like Fantasia, which didn't do well financially. Not all audiences love that kind of stuff, even though I don't get that. Lempicka in its final weeks are doing better, but not good. It did 83% last week and 87% this week, going from 275K to 419K. Merrily went from 1,435,572 to 1,518,186 selling out. Moulin Rouge, which had its final week with Boy George, so it'll be interesting to see how much it falls, went from 99% to selling out, and 1,405,859 to 1,528,631. Six went from 86% to 90%, and 765K to 850K. Suffs went from 80% to 93%, and 630K to 802K. And I'm very happy that even though I don't like Suffs as a musical, I know I didn't see it, but I may have listened to a potential totally legal copy of it online. I think it is very much like pandering the musical, and I don't think it's a good show. I am glad that an original musical that focuses on women and that is politically important is doing very well, because I thought this musical would flop even though it got Best Musical Tony nominations. And it definitely could pull an upset. It could win. I don't think it's going to, but I know a lot of people love it, and I think a lot of people are coming out being like, this is the best musical of the season. And I think Illinois has that mantle too, but because it's a dance musical and it's very unorthodox and a very new kind of musical, it is a bit divisive. And I think Suffs is a lot more traditional and a lot more appealing to everyone. And an interesting thing about Illinois is that, like, they labeled it as like a new kind of musical, but when they came to New York, or when they came to Broadway, they changed it to like a new musical, which, clearly was done to make sure that they got, Tony noms. Gatsby, despite no Tony wins, panned by critics and by audiences to an extent, is doing fantastic. Last week it performed to 83%, this week 90%, last week 1,049,784, this week 1,180,502, so it is doing fantastically well. I don't think we will know if Gatsby will survive for at least until January, like if it will close in January, or if it will last a full year until the fall, and we'll see how big that drop is. Because I could see it being pretty significant, and it faltering quite heavily. But I could also see it maintaining its lead, and I think because Jeremy and Eva are not stunt casting the way Daniel Radcliffe is, but they are bringing in an audience, and again, the brand of The Great Gatsby seems to be outdoing the bad reception it's received. The Heart of Rock and Roll, which, when's that going to close? It did 70% last week and 69% this week. 287K last week and 319K this week. The Notebook went from 82% to 87% and 673K to 786K. So The Notebook is just getting by. It definitely should be doing better because of how strong the brand is. I think that we will just know if this will last many years or if it will close in January when we get to the fall and we see what kind of drop it has. And even in the summer, I think if it can't make $1 million consistently for a couple of weeks in the summer, that's going to be very concerning. The Outsiders finally made $1 million and sold out. And again, even if that doesn't win Best Musical, it's by far the most financially successful new musical of the whole season. The Who's Tommy went from 78% to 85% and 910K to 991K. The Wiz continues to be a mammoth, going from 94% to 95%, and 1,458,478 to 1,567,632. And then Water for Elephants did 82% last week and 83% this week, going from 1,010,054 to 1,074,006. Water for Elephants it's doing good, but it definitely is the weaker performing new musicals that got nominated for Best Musical, because obviously The Notebook, not The Notebook, but besides The Outsiders, which is just making $1 million, but that's because they had cheap tickets for previews. The Great Gatsby is doing better than Water for Elephants. Stuffs isn't doing better, but it had a better momentum. Hell's Kitchen is doing better. Cabaret is Back to the Future is doing. Oh, actually, Back to the Future is doing worse than Water for Elephants. That's crazy, but I think Water for Elephants is destined to close, by the end of the year, I'd say. I think that it's only making $1 million because of the Best Musical nom. I know a lot of audience members, they just don't like it very much. I kind of enjoyed it. I liked it. I thought it was better than expected and better than The Notebook. But it is doing better than The Notebook, though. But those are the grosses for this week. Overall, a pretty good, solid week. And I think the Tony noms and spring break, or not spring break, but like the spring season is helping a lot of these new musicals. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. Like, subscribe, and comment. And I will see you in the next video. Peace.